Welcome back to Scene Rundown. Let's watch Napoleon, one of the greatest military commanders of all time. 1789. As a result of the French people's growing dissatisfaction with the social and political situation, the French Revolution got underway. 1793. Marie Antoinette is apprehended and given a death-by-guillotine sentence. As she approaches, the people in the streets throw trash at her, and when she is finally beheaded and her head is held up in victory, everyone applauds. Napoleon Bonaparte, a young and aspirational captain from Corsica, played by Joaquin Phoenix, is observing from the crowd. The reign of terror in France commences with the ascent to power of Maximilien Robespierre. Despite having few resources, Napoleon and his brother Lucien meet with revolutionary leader Paul Barras to begin the siege of Toulon. Napoleon devises a plan to invade the village near the harbor. Despite cannon fire striking his horse, he continues on and destroys British forces both on land and at sea by destroying their ships. Later on, Napoleon is made a general. Following his deposition, Robespierre makes an unsuccessful attempt at suicide and then attempts to flee. After receiving a guillotine sentence, the reign of terror ends with the release of almost 40,000 inmates. Napoleon first meets the noble widow Josephine de Beauharnais, Vanessa Kirby, during a dance in the summer. Eugene, Josephine's son, approaches Napoleon with a request from his mother. "May I please get my late father's sword back?" Napoleon returns a random sword he had taken and starts courting Josephine. After engaging in an intense sexual relationship, the two get married. He finds out that her ex-husband was put to death. Later, Napoleon is seen shooting royalists who are attempting an uprising and conducting the suppression against them in the streets. During the Battle of the Pyramids, Napoleon sets out to liberate Egypt. The French easily took possession of the weakly defended city the next day. Ostensibly an Ottoman territory, Egypt was then ruled by the Mamluks, descendants of Muslim slave soldiers who had infiltrated the Ottoman ranks through military advancement. Josephine starts a romance with a soldier named Hippolyte Charles while he is abroad. Napoleon returns home despite being informed that doing so would be viewed as abandonment. When Josephine returns after a trip away, he goes back and throws all of her stuff outside in the rain. Napoleon, who admits to having had affairs in the past but insists he didn't love the other women, scolds her for her infidelity. In response, Josephine retorts that Napoleon would be nothing without her. Napoleon meets with the Directory to discuss his departure, but instead he blasts them for France's inadequate leadership. Emmanuel Joseph Sieyès persuades Napoleon to stage a coup in order to assume the position of first consul. Following the overthrow of the present leaders, Napoleon and Lucien persuade their armies to support them in their fight against the opposition. Later, Napoleon and Josephine are crowned Emperor and Empress of France, respectively, but Napoleon shocks everyone by taking the crown and wearing it on his own head, appearing to be the country's rescuer. Soon after, Napoleon tries to forge an alliance with the Austrians and England by working with Caulaincourt and Foreign Minister Talleyrand, but he is turned down. In a childlike manner, Napoleon yells at the king's emissary before briskly leaving. Napoleon assembles his army at Austerlitz 1 year later to fight the forces of Russia and Austria. While he and his men wait in the woods, he draws them out onto the ice, whereupon he uses the cannons to break through the ice and submerge his foes into the icy water. Later, when his troops are lost, Tsar Alexander IV declines to eat dinner with Napoleon and the Austrian Emperor Francis I. In addition, Napoleon advises Francis to be happy that he did not destroy his whole army. Napoleon is deprived of an heir since he and Josephine are unable to procreate for long. In order to determine whether he could be the reason for the infertility, his mother, Letizia, forces him to have sex with a young woman. After Letizia informs Napoleon that he had gotten the young woman pregnant, he and Josephine quickly set up a formal divorce. Napoleon smacks Josephine until she finishes reading her portion of the decree at their wedding in front of the council. She is transferred to reside at the Château de Malmaison, where she keeps in touch with Napoleon via letters. Napoleon goes to see Alexander in an attempt to woo one of his sisters, but the little sister is too young, and the older sister is already betrothed. He then marries Duchess Marie-Louise in order to form an alliance with Austria. A year later, she gives birth to a boy. When Napoleon sees his child, he breaks down in grief and subsequently brings him over to see Josephine, 1812. When Alexander refuses to sign Napoleon's peace pact, Napoleon begins to prepare an invasion of Russia. At the Battle of Borodino, he commands his forces, and they prevail despite losing more than 28,000 soldiers. They arrive in Moscow to discover the entire city has been evacuated. Napoleon wakes up from his tent to see that the Russians have set fire to the city. Napoleon is informed that if he continues forward to catch up with the Russian army, they will not survive the winter. After suffering the loss of almost 500,000 men, the army retreats toward France. Napoleon is ultimately compelled to cede his crown and go into exile on the island of Elba as a result of this. 1815. Napoleon keeps writing to Josephine until he finds out that she is unwell. He departs from the island and makes his way back to France, whereupon he encounters his former soldiers and wins them over to his cause. Napoleon finds out from Josephine's daughter that she died of diphtheria when he goes back to her house. Napoleon sheds tears for his ex-wife. In preparation for Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington, and his army at the Battle of Waterloo, Napoleon amassed more troops once more. Napoleon's army puts in their best effort in the brutal combat. French cavalry charges are repulsed by British infantry squares, so this is the best formation to defend against cavalry. A desperate Napoleon took his horse and urges his remaining soldiers forward. But this advance is decimated by reformed lines of enemy infantry, and the English men ultimately prevail. Napoleon's army is forced to surrender when Prussian Marshal Blucher's cavalry arrived and pursued them, and the French are broken. Even so, Napoleon pauses to give Wellesley a salute. Once more, Napoleon is banished, this time to the island of St. Helena. While two girls play nearby, he takes some time to work on his memoirs. Despite what they've been told, he assures them that he was the one who lit Moscow on fire. Napoleon then falls to the ground as he hears Josephine's voice pleading with him to return to her. Napoleon Bonaparte passed away in 1821. In more than 80 engagements, he oversaw the deaths of approximately 3 million enemy soldiers. His last recorded words were, "France, Army, Josephine." Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more videos.